Hello and welcome back to Red Room. I hope you're all well. So this is the culmination of doing this squad of Ork boys we've been doing. This is the boss. So we're going to have a whistle-stop tour through how we did the whole thing. There will be some scenes missing. Eagle-eyed viewers will spot that. I don't know quite what happened. We lost some footage and didn't capture some of the things we wanted to. But at the moment we are just putting on some Vallejo basing texture, a grey coloured version of that. So I've spoken before, not 100% certain I like this technique. I think sand and PVA glue would probably be an easier method for basing. This requires at least 2 coats as well. The first coat tends to dry a bit translucent, so I don't know. I need to practice with it more, but I was... Given how much of a nightmare it was to apply and get to a finish I was happy with, I think maybe sand and PVA glue is just as good. So at the moment the model has been xenophil primed and given a base coat of, I think, Vallejo Ork flesh, but to be honest, ignore all of that because we're not going to use any of that as it became obvious through the course of doing the Ork Boys. The xenophil priming doesn't really do an awful lot of good for the techniques that I'm using, so just imagine it's black. So we're going to start out with some Caliban green as our base coat. This will be the base for all of the Ork flesh. And yeah, we're just going to liberally apply that all over the model. Get a good even coat. It is a very matte, dark colour, so it's a good base. And now we're moving on to Warpstone Glow as our first highlight on the flesh. So leaving the recesses dark and full of Caliban green, and we're just going to put the Warpstone Glow on all the highlighted bits, all the raised bits, and possibly worth doing 2 coats with this one. It's not as opaque. And just doing the details on the face now. So here we're applying a second coat. Yeah, it's important to pick out all the detail with the hands. They're one of the best places to get that highlight and contrast in. So anywhere around the knuckles, you want to pick out. And important lunar update. She has had surgery now. The offending wound that just simply would not heal has been removed. She's got a big old scar for a little pussycat, but yeah, it's good to see her without a cone. It's good to see her happy. So hooray, 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 hooray. Okay, we're just going to put some orc flesh wash on. As the name implies, it's there just to darken everything down. I think it's a very it's a bit too shotgun blast at times. It's a bit too dark, so I would not advise highlighting it right up and then applying it, because you'll find a lot of the detail you put in has been obliterated. So this is me now just putting on another layer of warpstone glow over the top of what I've washed down, because it does darken it a lot. It's good for adding contrast, but the more modern day washes, obviously they've just gone through in another reiteration, which I have no idea about. I can't comment on how those are, but the more modern day washes seem to be a lot thinner and more dilute, which means you can be a lot more subtle with them. It's good and bad. And now we're moving on to moot green. So this is the majority of our highlight for an orc. So we will mix up some warpstone green, warpstone glow and moot green to give us an intermediate step between our two highlights. And again, picking out all of the muscles. And this in recesses, so using ever decreasing amounts of paint to give that 3D effect. And a biggie update, I've just ordered up some supplies to make the base. I'm using those silver cake bases. I think they're quite useful things, so yeah, we'll see if we can add a few of them together and create a decent base for them. And that'll make me a lot less tense about knocking him over, so... I am waiting on that Chaos Space Marine to be released, the McFarlane one, but it doesn't seem to be out here in the UK at the moment. When you go on all of the sites, it's sort of, pending, awaiting delivery. So again, just picking out all the best bits of the muscles now. And highlighting the face. Okay, here we've added some white into the moot green, and now we're just doing the last sort of highlights. This is where we really do want to pick up on the knuckles, any really bony bits, the face. This is where the important detail bits need to come out. Elbows again, another sharp part that's really worth highlighting well. Right, and now we're going to go on to the yellow armour. So, using Avalanche Sunset as our base coat. I'm going to apply very liberally because we want it to cover well. But I have to say it does cover, for a yellow over black, not bad at all. Forgive me for my many wanderings out of shot. It's a feature. I need to get better at staying where I should do when I'm filming this. In my defence, I have been battling massive RSI doing this. So quite a lot of this, it being a peak season, well, I'd argue we've just gone off a peak season. April, May is really the busiest time for gardeners. Now it's all been a bit dry and dusty, but still. My arms are suffering, and yeah, quite a lot of this my hands were completely numb for, so yeah, not ideal. The joys of a day job. The trousers have been done in US olive drab from Vallejo. Again, this seems to be some footage I've missed out on. I apologise. Okay, we're going to go and move on to tin bits now. Oh, sorry, forgive me, tinny tin. Tin bits is its old equivalent in Citadel from a long time ago. But it is the best stuff to do your bases for anything that's gold, bronze, copper, that kind of sphere of metallics. It's an excellent base. So yeah, just adding it to buckles and any other bits. I didn't want to use too much gold for these guys. I know that they're bad moons and they're the ones with the money, but I felt that pure pristine shining gold, that's a bit imperial, isn't it? It's a bit custodes. So yeah, I thought orcs would be just fine with bronze and copper. And now we're going to do the leather. So we're going to start with a base coat of Doomball Brown from Citadel. Yeah, I'm really glad I expanded my brown selection. It was limited to say the least. I've found definitely doing this project that I'm missing having that extent of paint, that range of selection that I used to have, that now sadly is all completely and utterly dried out. So we're on to cork brown now from Vallejo, and this is going to form the sort of vegetan leather of the holster on his back. And now on to bright bronze for all the bits we've just covered with tin bits. A beautiful, beautiful view of my fingers there, which I'm sure you all needed to see. Sorry. One day I will have a much more professional setup and things will be easier. Okay, now we're going to move on and shade all of the lead belcher that you didn't see me paint on. Sorry, everybody. Again, rubbish. But I'm sure you've seen me paint lead belcher before, and if not, there will be many a tutorial in future, so worry ye not. But yeah, just liberally applying some Nuln oil to shade down all of the bolt gun metal. And now we're doing some flesh wash, some very old school Citadel flesh wash on the bronze stuff. So I said before, one of the issues is the thickness of pigmentation in the old style washes and inks. In this case, for doing leathers and doing a sort of nice luster on gold, I like that, but it still needs to be watered down a lot. If you were to just take it straight out of the pot, oh yeah, it's a bit strong. It's a bit rich, Yeah. Every time you see little pools of brown ink, that's me watering it down. And yes, the wet palette is a mess. So this is where we stand at the end of that. Okay, now we're moving on to doing our Bad Moon Yellow, our Vallejo non-unionized Mexican equivalent for copyright purposes. Yeah, just straight up moon yellow if it's Vallejo. And much as with the skin and with everything doing this, we leave the Avaland, the darker Avaland, in the recesses and liberally apply the moon yellow everywhere else. So I've said before, it's not nowhere near as an opaque a paint as Avaland, unsurprisingly, but it's also more plasticky. It's got kind of a sheen on it, so you may like that, you may not. And this was the moment, because you've probably been watching these videos a lot of the time going, she's handling them all, and I know, how many times do I mess up my models because I've worn the paint off. So this is a Red Grass Games model holder. I looked at the Citadel one and I thought, maybe. But I didn't like how narrow bits of it was. I say my arms and hands are suffering from a lot of RSI, so I don't know. I was a bit sceptical about that. So now we're just touching up the black bits. And we're going to do some green-brown from Vallejo for the rags and for the claws, talons, etc. Not the teeth, though. So yeah, all in all, I'm pretty happy with that little handle. Using putty to keep the thing on there, it's good and bad. It's good and bad. I would have preferred something that you just endlessly could, refix and adjust. But there were advantages and disadvantages to this. It takes some learning. Old habit. This is a very old habit. It's dying very hard. So we're adding some white in here. Some brilliant white from Vallejo, but as long as it's white, it doesn't matter. Though you may find Citadel make terrible, terrible whites. So this is where we're going to do the loincloth and the handle on both the gun and the axe. So we're going to start with a very pale, very pale grey. Just a tiny amount of black introduced into the white there. You find it's very easy to overwhelm white, so little tiny amounts. I was very mindful I didn't want to use a lot of red or blue or other kind of primary colours for this, because these being Bad Moon Orks, yeah. So just literally using some ochre brown for the horns. And the handle on the stick bomb. Okay, now we're using some black red, and this is going to be the basis for anything bone coloured or the teeth. I'd love to say I showed you the entire process of building that bone up, but unfortunately that's another thing that's either ended up on the cutting room floor or I just simply never filmed it, so forgive me. I have a Dark Angels captain coming up, so we will be dealing with all of that then. So yeah, liberally apply that as a base for anything like bone. And spoiler alert, yeah, the tip is to just keep adding either bleach bone or wraith bone or any bone colours you've got from any of your reputable paint manufacturers, and just build it up that way, leaving either brilliant white or ivory or something like that at the very tips. But we will we'll address that in the next video, I promise. So that's the teeth done. So now we're moving back onto our bright bronze. We're going to go over all of the metal that we've dulled down with flesh wash. leave them recesses clear. Okay, Iraqi sand now. This is going to be used as a highlight for the rags around his arms. And then we move on to ivory from Vallejo. And we're going to mix that with the Iraqi sand to form another highlight on top of that, secondary or tertiary highlight. Who's keeping count? I don't know. So yeah, just edge highlighting these strips of fabric. Now we're going to use some Reichland Flesh Shade to contrast all of this. See, this in comparison to the old school flesh wash is, yeah, just a totally different substance altogether, much, much more dilute. Okay, and we've got some more Null oil coming out now, and this is going to be used to to shade all the recesses in the what will be sort of off-white, dirty white. And this is us just mixing up some Bugman's Glow and some white and some red, I think, just to give us a decent kind of tone for the tongue on Mr. Ork Boss. And now we move to dark grey from Vallejo. This is our go-to edge highlight for black. And now we move to actually adding the black decoration on everything. So, starting with the totem. I wanted this to be pretty simple. The problem when you've got a lot of different patterns going on, if you go too far, it just looks busy and a mess. So, I I want less is more, but equally continuing on with the tiger stripe theme that we've had with all the rest of the boys. On the armour at least anyway, not so much the totem. And yeah, I might have added some decals to this model, but unfortunately I screwed up finishing off the last of the boys and knocked over a load of microsol and wrecked all my Bad Moon transfers. So oh well, that'll have to be a thing for another day. And yeah, picking out the teeth on the iron jaws. And here come the tiger stripes. Which tragically, I would love to say I have a lot of extensive footage of me painting. I don't, forgive me. A lot of it wasn't very good footage, so... But we did a tutorial on it before, so if you want to see this more in depth, please check out earlier videos. So, now we're adding some flesh wash to our leather, which we've obviously highlighted, and yet again, I'm really sorry, didn't catch that footage. But the secret is, red-brown, or sorry, Doomball brown in this case. You can either highlight with a lighter shade of brown, obviously, or just add in some wraithbone or whatever, and bring up the highlights that way. And then yeah, we're just applying some more of that flesh wash onto the claws. So more Vallejo Brilliant White. I was determined to get value for money out of my wet palette, so yeah. So now we're just going to make our secondary highlight for our black. As ever with black, you must be careful not to over highlight it, because you can end up with something that's either grey or blue rather than the black you wanted it to be. But we'll deal with that in a second. So now we mix up water down a load of black. It doesn't matter, black is black. To achieve exactly what I was just talking about. So we're going to liberally apply that to everywhere we've highlighted to darken down the edge highlights, so it's all nice and subtle. Again, you have to be careful that you don't make it too dark and you end up obliterating what you've just done. But you will learn in time. You can mix it with Nuln Oil as well, that's up to you. I don't actually know if that makes any difference either way, really. I hope you enjoy my lovely little subscribe thing that doesn't at all look like a serial killer's scratched it in there. So, more cork brown. So there's the second coat of cork brown. And now we're mixing up a very, 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 very pale off-white or grey, however you want to define it. And this is going to be used to highlight all of the grey rags that we've got at the moment. And by this point we've stuck the head back on. It's always a dilemma about how disassembled to keep your models and at what point to start rebuilding them, because you don't want to have absolutely pristine perfect paintwork that you then destroy with plastic cement, trying to glue it all back in together and it not going the way you felt it was going to. See Biggie Marine. But equally, it's getting access to things. Sometimes it is better if you paint it all in different bits. It's one of those that you've just got to decide what logistically is easier. So yeah, just highlighting all of the off-white fabric that we've got. I wanted there to be a nice kind of contrast with it. A lot of this is very warm, very yellow, so I wanted there to be a cold kind of colour going on. With yellow, purple is a natural accompaniment according to colour theory, but you don't want to be too rigid and predictable with that. And this is the very final sort of highlights. Very nearly white. So now we're mixing up some cork brown and white to highlight the holster. I wanted this to look like some untanned leather. Yeah, picking out all of the work around the stitching, etc. Okay, we're adding some more Iraqi sand now. Has it been hot where you are? It's certainly been hot here. So we're just using this to highlight the rags around the wrists. And then we begin to highlight the horn, so it's a mixture of pale Iraqi sand and then going into the ochre brown, the darker ochre brown. And then using some wet blending to unify the two. And now we highlight the Bad Moon's yellow by adding some white to the Vallejo Moon yellow. And then we start moving on to highlighting our lead belcher. So, again, this is where we've clearly lost quite a lot of footage, and I apologise profusely. So, we've done the olive drab, we've highlighted bits of that with some Vallejo grey-green, which we use for the bases as well. That's a very good highlight for the olive drab. It's only a little step upwards. We've shaded down on the olive drab with some Nuln Oil to just give it a bit of depth. We've done all of the bone that I talked about. All of our leather is all completely finished now at this point as well, and everything has been stuck together. The holster on the back was given a wash down with some old school flesh wash as well, and given red, any old red, it doesn't matter, to pick out the stitching. It's so annoying suddenly realising, oh no, I've lost all of this. And yeah, the yellow, as before in the yellow tutorial, that has been dirtied up with Reichland Flesh Shade. It's a really easy way to give that a bit of grime. So anywhere around bolts, joins, etc. Just give a nice bit of that in, a wash of that, just to give it that feeling of slightly rusty, very oiled metal. So we highlight the lead belcher we've just gone over with some Vallejo chainmail. But as I say, we will do a tutorial on how to do these skulls and bones and everything else in the next vid. It'll be bone-tastic, I promise. So, yeah, picking out rivets with the chainmail. And now we return to bright bronze from Vallejo. And we add in some of the chainmail silver to create a highlight for it. And this is where we're just going to edge highlight all of the bronze. Also at this point, by this stage, we have added another coat of basing texture. We've then added Nuln Oil to darken that down and give that some depth. I really did miss a fairly large amount of this process. Sorry. Live and learn. Okay, this is some Vallejo Ochre Brown and some Brilliant White. And we're just going to mix these together to highlight the wood on the stick bomb. And now this is some green brown, which is our base for the claws or nails, or however you want to describe them, with Mr. Ork. Now largely moving into our remedial work, which I'll spare you the majority of. Still a lot of good arm shots in this one, hey? Okay, so we were talking about colour, we were talking about purple, weren't we? So we're just going to use some purple to highlight the, to pick out the lens on his bit of bionic eye. I will say the footage here is pretty rubbish. This is where I need a better camera. And also for me to be in shot, which would help. It'd be the greatest camera in the world if it cannot see what I'm doing, yeah. So, we did toy around with using some fluorescent magenta as a highlight for this. I don't think it worked that well, so that's why a very neon bit of paint has appeared at the top there. So we used black and I think it's Imperial Purple, Royal Purple from Vallejo, to make the do the top of the lens, because the theory with this is you start off with a base colour, red, green, yellow, blue, whatever, purple, and you want to have at the top, you want to have a much darker section, and at the bottom you want a much lighter section, and that should hopefully give off the illusion of this being a translucent sort of cabochon cut gem. This was actually a lot more of a nightmare than it looked. It's always the way that the smallest things on a model can sometimes be the biggest nightmares. Now we're going to highlight or dry brush our base. So we're literally dark Vallejo dark grey, a lot of white lashings of it, and yeah, just going to liberally apply that all over the base. I don't think I think my bases are my weakest, or one of my weakest areas at the moment. But I need to get all my gear together. We're still in the experimental phase. Yeah, just very roughly brushing over this. Make sure you wash it, wipe the majority of the paint off on a tissue. This is another nothing worse than going to do the first stroke and go, that was way too much. Okay, and this is us using the aforementioned grey-green to do all around the base. And you want to do at least 2 coats of that. Okay, and now we move on to using Vallejo snow effect. We're just going to use little clumps of that to provide some interest. I find using a modelling tool to apply it works better than using a paintbrush, but your mileage may vary. Again, more excellent footage.